Across the Orion Arm, distress signals were background noise. Pirate raids, border skirmishes, ecological collapses. Most civilizations learned to survive alone. Aid was negotiated, calculated, transactional. No one moved fleets without profit. The Thorellian Combine had known this when their outer defense ring fell in under 3 hours. The invaders did not posture or demand tribute. They translated nothing. They jammed communications, severed trade lanes, and began systematic orbital suppression. Cities went dark in precise grids. Shipyards vanished in controlled kinetic strikes. It was extermination conducted with engineering discipline. The Combine Council gathered beneath a dim tactical holosphere, watching red icons spread across their colonies like a slow infection. Their military had numbers but not resilience. Their species evolved on a stable oceanic world, mild seasons, low gravity, minimal predators. Conflict in their history had been brief and ritualized. They had never faced something that did not negotiate. When the final defensive bastion over Kepri Prime disintegrated, the Council authorized a full-spectrum distress broadcast. The signal was simple: coordinates, invasion data, casualty projections, surrender probability, 94% within 11 standard cycles. It was transmitted toward every known polity, including Earth. Silence followed. Hours stretched. Relays confirmed the message had cleared jamming interference. Long-range receivers across the spiral arm would have detected it, but no acknowledgement returned. Some counselors expressed relief. Humanity was classified as a tier Deathworld species. Category 4 Biosphere. Extreme climate variance. Apex predator saturation. Pathogenic volatility. Historical records saturated with internal warfare before unification. Their rise to interstellar capability had not softened them, it had refined them. Humans did not intervene lightly. They were known to defend their territory with disproportionate response. Beyond their borders, they were unpredictable. And they were far away. As the invaders advanced toward the Combine's population core, another colony went silent. Billions displaced. Orbital habitats vented atmosphere in glittering spirals. The Council prepared evacuation protocols, knowing there was nowhere left to evacuate. Then a single signal cut through. Not from a neighboring ally. Not from a trade partner. From Sol. It contained no diplomatic preamble. No inquiry. No expression of sympathy. Only a time-stamped confirmation of receipt and a request for updated enemy vector telemetry. The chamber fell into stillness. They had not asked for negotiation terms. They had not questioned legitimacy. They had not demanded compensation. They wanted battlefield data. Within minutes, automated probes along the galactic relay network registered encrypted traffic surging outward from human space. Military channels activated. Logistics corridors opened. Civilian traffic rerouted to clear jump lanes. Observers from 3 neighboring civilizations intercepted fragments of fleet mobilization orders. The scale made no sense for a limited intervention. Multiple carrier groups. Heavy dreadnought signatures. Long-range supply vessels configured for sustained deployment. Humanity was not sending observers. They were assembling for war. The invaders, confident in numerical superiority, continued their advance. They had crushed faster species before. Their doctrine relied on shock and inevitability. Overwhelm command structures before coordination could occur. The Combine fit every profile of a rapid collapse, until deep-range sensors detected gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Not one distortion. Dozens. Subspace rippled like struck water. Space itself bent under synchronized translation drives. One by one, massive silhouettes tore back into real space, angular hulls layered in composite armor, radiators extended like skeletal wings, weapon arrays locked but powered. They did not form a ceremonial arc. They deployed into defensive geometry around the remaining Combine worlds with mechanical precision. Energy signatures stabilized. Shield matrices overlapped to create a layered perimeter. Civilian evacuation corridors were mapped and secured before any offensive targeting routines activated. A final transmission left the human flagship, broadcast on an open channel to both the Combine and the invaders. We have received the distress call. No threats followed. No demands. Just a pause long enough for the message to settle across every sensor array in the system. Then calmly. Transmit full hostile fleet composition. The galaxy's monitoring stations watched in silence as additional jump signatures flared beyond the first wave. Humanity had not dispatched a symbolic force. They had sent a fleet. And every civilization listening understood the implication. The SOS had not been ignored. The first wave stabilized formation within 40 seconds of translation. Human vessels did not drift or hesitate. Each hull adjusted vector with microbursts of controlled thrust, sliding into pre-assigned coordinates that created a layered defensive shell around the surviving Thorellian worlds. Outer picket destroyers extended sensor lattices. Heavy cruisers positioned themselves along likely invasion corridors. Behind them, carrier groups released autonomous interceptor swarms that fanned outward in disciplined arcs. Thorellian tactical officers struggled to process the density of data flooding their screens. The human fleet was not improvised. It was structured for sustained, high-casualty engagement. Dedicated repair ships moved toward damaged orbital infrastructure. Shield projectors were deployed into empty space, anchoring overlapping energy barriers that compensated for the Combine's shattered defense grid. Even before firing, humanity was rebuilding the battlefield geometry. Additional jump signatures ignited at the system's periphery. Reinforcements. Massive hulls emerged, dreadnought-class warships carrying spinal weapons large enough to register as gravitational anomalies. Their armor plating bore visible scarring, sections replaced with mismatched alloys that prioritized durability over aesthetic uniformity. These were ships that had survived previous wars and been refitted, not decommissioned. Encrypted channels crackled across human networks. Orders moved with ruthless efficiency. Supply tenders advanced to pre-calculated anchor points, establishing mobile logistics hubs. Ammunition stockpiles were unlocked. Medical frigates powered triage bays. This was not a rescue sortie, it was a campaign architecture unfolding in real time. The Thorellian Council received a direct transmission from the human flagship. The visual feed remained disabled. Only a steady voice transmitted across the link. Civilian population density maps required. Mark evacuation priorities. No commentary on losses. No ceremonial condolences. The request was operational. Data transferred. Within minutes, human carriers altered deployment patterns. Interceptor screens thickened around population centers. Long-range artillery platforms adjusted firing solutions to create exclusion zones that diverted the invaders away from evacuation vectors. Across the system, the hostile fleet reacted. The invaders had been advancing in segmented assault wedges designed to isolate planetary targets. Now their formation stalled. Sensor reports identified the human arrivals and recalculated threat projections. Probability matrices shifted. For the first time since entering Combine territory, the invaders reduced forward momentum. Humanity did not exploit the pause recklessly. Instead, reconnaissance drones accelerated toward enemy flanks, mapping shield frequencies and propulsion harmonics. Electronic warfare suites activated, probing for vulnerabilities. The humans were studying before striking. A second transmission from the flagship reached both allied and hostile frequencies. We are establishing a defensive perimeter. Any hostile craft crossing designated boundaries will be engaged. Coordinates followed, precise and unambiguous. The invaders tested the line. A forward assault group pushed into the marked boundary at high acceleration, weapons charging in anticipation of a conventional exchange. Human destroyers did not fire immediately. They adjusted vectors, drawing the attackers deeper into a narrowing corridor formed by overlapping firing arcs. Then the trap closed. Long-range kinetic batteries discharged in synchronized volleys. Interceptor swarms cut across the invaders' retreat path, targeting propulsion nodes instead of command bridges. Within 90 seconds, 3 hostile capital ships were disabled, their engines venting plasma into vacuum. The remaining assault group withdrew. Across Combine channels, disbelief spread. The invaders had crushed fortified systems without slowing. Now they were retreating from an engagement measured in seconds. Human formations held steady. No pursuit yet. Behind the primary defensive line, evacuation transports began moving under escort. Medical frigates docked with crippled Thorellian stations, transferring trauma teams without hesitation. Human engineers integrated portable shield arrays into alien infrastructure, compensating for incompatible power systems through rapid software adaptation. The fleet continued to grow. Fresh FDL signatures flared beyond the outer system. Additional strike groups translated in perfect sequence, reinforcing weak sectors and expanding the perimeter outward. The scale of commitment became undeniable. Humanity was not wagering a fraction of its navy. It was deploying overwhelming force to guarantee outcome control. The invaders reorganized into a consolidated armada, abandoning segmented assaults. Their command ships shifted to rear positions, recalibrating strategy. They had anticipated panic and fragmentation. Instead, they faced cohesion reinforced by experience. Within the human flagship, targeting solutions finalized. Enemy shield harmonics were cataloged. Propulsion lag patterns analyzed. Countermeasures prepared. A final system-wide message transmitted from the human command network. Civilians are being evacuated. Engagement will escalate. No bravado. No spectacle. Across the dark expanse between fleets, weapon arrays powered to full capacity. Energy signatures spiked. Heat radiators flared white against the void. The next exchange would not be a warning. It would be decisive. The invaders consolidated into a single advancing wall of armor and firepower. Their doctrine favored compression, layer shields, synchronized volleys, crush resistance through sustained output. They had broken stronger fleets with that method. Against most civilizations, fear fractured coordination before the first barrage landed. Human formations did not fracture. As the hostile armada surged forward, human vessels altered spacing with deliberate precision, creating depth rather than density. Forward destroyers peeled away at calculated intervals, drawing targeting locks and dispersing incoming fire across staggered shield planes. Impacts bloomed in controlled flashes instead of catastrophic ruptures. Damage reports streamed through command channels, acknowledged and redistributed without emotional inflection. The first full exchange detonated across the void. Enemy plasma lances carved luminous scars through space, striking where human ships had been seconds earlier. Anticipation had replaced reaction. Predictive algorithms mapped hostile firing rhythms and micro-adjustments in vector-disrupted lock stability. Simultaneously, human rail batteries answered, not at command bridges, but at shield emitters and power junctions. They dismantled capability before destroying hulls. The invaders recalibrated, shifting to saturation bombardment. Hundreds of projectiles filled projected escape corridors, forcing human ships to absorb punishment. Several cruisers took direct hits. Armor peeled away. Internal compartments depressurized. Casualty figures rose. No retreat command followed. Instead, damaged ships rotated out of the forward arc under escort, sliding behind the main line where repair tenders latched onto breached plating. Fresh vessels advanced seamlessly to replace them. There was no visible hesitation, no confusion over succession of position. Every captain understood the formation's logic before the order completed transmission. The invaders attempted a flanking maneuver, splitting off a rapid assault wing aimed at the evacuation corridor near Kepri Prime. They expected panic, a diversion that would fracture the defensive shell. Human response was immediate. Interceptor carriers unleashed reserve squadrons held in disciplined silence until that precise moment. Autonomous fighters swarmed the assault wing, not engaging in wasteful dogfights, but targeting propulsion clusters with surgical bursts. Momentum died. Stranded hostile ships drifted, exposed. Long-range artillery finished them without diverting core fleet alignment. Across the battlefield, a pattern emerged. Humans did not chase glory shots. They targeted infrastructure of war, engines, shield nodes, weapon capacitors. They stripped functionality piece by piece until enemy hulls became inert masses. The invader command recalculated again. Casualty projections no longer favored them. Yet their culture equated withdrawal with systemic weakness. They escalated. A central dread platform powered a spinal cannon rarely deployed outside extermination protocols. Energy accumulation distorted local spacetime, a gravitational tremor detectable even within shielded bridges. The weapon discharged toward the densest cluster of human ships, a beam capable of gutting multiple cruisers in a single sweep. Humans had anticipated escalation. Milliseconds before impact, the targeted vessels executed a pre-coordinated divergence, splitting along vertical vectors while a rear-positioned dreadnought surged forward. Its shield matrix amplified beyond nominal tolerance, absorbing the brunt of the blast. Armor vitrified. External structures disintegrated. Internal fires erupted. The ship did not disintegrate. It held. And as its shields collapsed, it fired its own spinal weapon directly along the beam's residual path, using the enemy's discharge corridor as a guide. The counterstrike penetrated weakened shielding on the hostile dread platform and detonated within its core. The invader flagship fractured from the inside out. Silence rippled through hostile formations. Command coherence faltered. Human vessels advanced for the first time. Not recklessly. Not in a disordered surge. They tightened the perimeter and increased firing tempo, pressing advantage with cold efficiency. Boarding pods launched toward disabled enemy capitals, not for conquest, but to secure surrender protocols and prevent self-destruction cascades that would endanger nearby civilian routes. The invaders attempted to regroup around secondary command ships. Communication latency spiked as coordination degraded. For a species accustomed to overwhelming dominance, sustained resistance was destabilizing. Human casualty lists continued to grow. Medical frigates overflowed. Replacement crews transferred from reserve transports without delay. The line never thinned, because humanity had evolved where survival was never guaranteed. On a world of predators, storms, disease, and internal conflict, adaptation was instinct. Pain did not equal defeat. Loss did not mandate withdrawal. The invaders finally signaled fallback toward outer system vectors. Human ships adjusted trajectory to block escape routes that threatened populated worlds, leaving only one corridor open, away from combined territory. A clear message transmitted across all frequencies. Withdraw beyond designated boundary. Further advance will result in total neutralization. The choice was deliberate. Not annihilation, but absolute refusal to yield. And for the first time in their expansion history, the invaders hesitated. The hesitation did not last. Fragmented but still lethal, the invader armada attempted one final calculation. If they could decapitate human command, momentum might swing back in their favor. Secondary capital ships redirected power reserves into concentrated strike formations, aiming toward the largest human dreadnought signatures at the center of the defensive lattice. Human command anticipated the vector shift before weapons fully charged. Rather than tighten around their own flagships, they thinned the apparent center, redistributing heavy assets outward while leaving a controlled vulnerability. The invaders surged toward it, committing remaining high-yield munitions into what appeared to be an exposed command corridor. It was engineered bait. As hostile vessels crossed the threshold, gravity mines deployed from previously silent platforms. Space distorted in abrupt pulses, scrambling propulsion harmonics and forcing enemy ships into unstable trajectories. Human artillery units, already aligned, unleashed crossfire from 3 axes. Precision strikes shredded weapon capacitors mid-charge. Containment failures cascaded across the invader line. Several enemy cruisers ruptured from internal overload rather than external impact. Amid the chaos, human boarding wings initiated their most dangerous operation. Armored insertion craft accelerated toward drifting hostile capitals whose self-destruct protocols had activated. The objective was not capture for intelligence alone. It was prevention of catastrophic detonations that could tear through civilian-safe corridors. Boarding teams breached hulls under hostile gravity conditions and fluctuating atmospheric compositions. Tactical feeds reported resistance pockets, but engagement time was minimal. Human units advanced methodically, prioritizing reactor control nodes and command cores. They severed detonation chains, secured navigation systems, and transmitted surrender parameters back to Fleet Command. No triumph broadcast followed. Instead, automated humanitarian channels opened. To all hostile vessels, power down primary weapons and disengage drive systems. Medical assistance will be rendered upon compliance. The message was clinical, devoid of mockery. It offered survival, not humiliation. Across the battlefield, remaining invader ships faced a narrowing calculus. Their primary flagship was debris. Assault wings were disabled or boarded. Retreat vectors remained open only away from populated zones, carefully left unobstructed by human formation design. A final attempt at defiance emerged from a damaged command carrier that began charging its reactors for a ramming trajectory toward Kepri Prime. Its path would intersect evacuation lanes within minutes. Human response was immediate and absolute. 3 dreadnoughts altered vectors simultaneously, interposing themselves between the carrier and the planet. Coordinated kinetic salvos targeted structural stress points along the hostile vessel's spine. The carrier disintegrated in sequential fractures before it could reach terminal acceleration. Debris fields were redirected by localized tractor arrays to prevent atmospheric entry. The message was unmistakable. Civilian harm would not be tolerated. With offensive capability shattered and command cohesion broken, the invader remnants transmitted a withdrawal code across their fleet. Surviving ships pivoted toward the open corridor humanity had left unguarded and initiated FTL spooling. Human vessels did not pursue beyond the established boundary. They maintained firing locks until the last hostile signature vanished from the system. Only then did weapon arrays power down to standby levels. Silence expanded across the void, punctuated only by rescue beacons and the distant glow of cooling wreckage. Human fleets transitioned immediately from combat posture to stabilization protocol. Engineering ships dispersed to reinforce compromised orbital rings. Medical frigates requested casualty transfers from Thorellian facilities without regard to species compatibility complications. Supply tenders distributed atmospheric processors and emergency rations. An open broadcast left the human flagship, transmitted on all galactic monitoring frequencies. Distress calls will be answered. Acts of systemic extermination will be opposed. No expansion claims followed. No territorial annexation demands. No leverage requested for the scale of intervention. The declaration functioned as doctrine, not threat. Across listening civilizations, strategic analysts recalibrated threat matrices. Humanity was not expansionist. It was conditional. Violence deployed with restraint, but without hesitation when provoked by extinction-level aggression. Within the Combine's surviving council chambers, disbelief gave way to comprehension. The fleet that had arrived without invitation had fought without seeking tribute and held back from annihilation when victory was assured. Beyond the debris field, human ships began recovery of their own damaged hulls, towing crippled vessels into repair formations. Casualty reports were transmitted internally. Replacement crews reassigned. Losses acknowledged in quiet data exchanges. No celebration. Only completion of objective. The line had been drawn and enforced. And the galaxy understood that it had shifted. The battlefield did not erupt in celebration. It settled into controlled motion. Human vessels drifted through debris fields with disciplined restraint, tagging unstable wreckage and redirecting fragments away from planetary gravity wells. Recovery drones moved in coordinated grids, extracting survivors from shattered hulls, Thorellian and invader alike. Medical frigates operated at full capacity, triage algorithms adapting to alien physiologies in real time. No distinction was made between former enemy and ally once weapons were silent. Orbital infrastructure around Kepri Prime remained scarred but intact. Portable shield arrays anchored by human engineers compensated for structural fractures in the defense ring. Power distribution nodes were recalibrated. Atmospheric processors were stabilized. Within hours, sections of the planetary network previously considered lost flickered back to operational status. The Thorellian Council transmitted formal gratitude, layered with diplomatic caution. They expected negotiation to follow: resource concessions, military alignment clauses, dependency treaties. Intervention at this scale traditionally came with binding cost. The human flagship responded with a logistics manifest: replacement reactor cores, medical supplies, structural alloys compatible with Thorellian fabrication systems, advisory teams for temporary defensive restructuring. No contract demands accompanied the data packet. A single clarification followed: stability of this system increases regional security. Reconstruction assistance will continue until autonomous function is restored. It reframed the war not as charity, nor as conquest, but as calculated prevention. Extinction events created destabilization ripples. Humanity had eliminated a threat vector before it propagated. Across the wider galactic network, surveillance relays replayed battle telemetry. Independent observers confirmed casualty ratios, formation discipline, escalation control. Analysts who once categorized humans primarily as volatile recalibrated their assessments. The defining variable was not aggression. It was threshold. Humanity tolerated distance. It ignored minor conflicts. It refrained from expansion despite capacity. But when confronted with systematic eradication, response scaled beyond proportionality. The invader species transmitted no further incursions along the Orion Arm. Long-range probes detected their fleet regrouping deep within unclaimed sectors, internal communications encrypted at unprecedented levels. They had encountered resistance that did not fracture under pressure and did not overextend in pursuit of dominance. Strategic recalculation replaced expansion doctrine. Within combined territory, civilian populations emerged from shelters to witness human vessels still stationed in silent orbit. No banners flew. No symbols were projected across planetary skies. Repairs continued with methodical efficiency. Human casualty transports departed first, escorted by lightly armed frigates. Damaged dreadnoughts followed, hulls scarred and darkened where shielding had failed. None lingered for recognition ceremonies. Before the primary fleet initiated departure sequencing, one final open transmission crossed regional frequencies. You signaled distress. The signal was received. Maintain defensive vigilance. Develop redundancy. If faced with annihilation, transmit again. There was no promise of permanent guardianship, only confirmation of conditional presence. The fleet aligned along pre-calculated vectors. FDL drives synchronized, generating a lattice of gravitational distortion that shimmered against the starfield. One by one, ships translated out of real space, leaving behind reinforced infrastructure and a rebalanced strategic equation. Silence returned to the system, but it carried different weight. The Thorellians began reconstruction not as a doomed species salvaging remnants, but as survivors granted time. Their military academies archived human tactical data. Their diplomatic envoys adjusted foreign policy frameworks. Dependence was avoided, but alliance parameters were reconsidered. Elsewhere, civilizations once hesitant to involve humanity in regional disputes reevaluated assumptions. An unanswered distress call had been a common expectation in interstellar politics. Now, uncertainty favored hope. If extinction loomed, Earth might answer. In distant observation hubs, a phrase entered strategic lexicons: deterrence through response. Humanity did not patrol every border. It did not dictate governance. It intervened when a line was crossed so decisively that ignoring it would redefine the balance of power. The galaxy had witnessed the scale of mobilization triggered by a single signal. Not rhetoric. Not negotiation. Action. The invaders had sought rapid eradication and encountered a civilization forged under harsher conditions than vacuum and plasma fire. A species shaped by predators, storms, scarcity, and internal conflict had chosen to extend that resilience outward. The SOS had not been background noise. It had been a trigger. And now every civilization understood the implication carved into the silence left behind. When Deathworlders move in defense of the vulnerable, extinction loses its certainty.